I'm Feathered Friends, and welcome. This is Songbird, and after the couple of videos that I put out about the history behind Wildcard and Snail games and all of that whole mess, I started doing some more digging. So I shared one video where I basically just went through just the ARC community's understanding of the situation, kind of just the scuttlebutt, what most people who've been around the ARC community for a long time know about the situation. And then I found some Glassdoor reviews by employees of both Wildcard and Snail games, and I shared those, which really show that there's an extremely different company culture between the two different companies. They are not one and the same. They are not the same thing. But since then, I've been doing more digging, and I've realized that the ARC community's understanding of the situation that I shared in the first video is actually not 100% accurate. And so I feel like I need to correct that and also kind of bring everybody up to speed on the reality of the situation, which, in a nutshell, Snail Games doesn't actually own Studio Wildcard or the ARC IP. But this isn't the good news that it sounds like at first glance. It's actually worse than we thought. So just hang in there. I need to back up a little bit and give you guys a little bit more of the history of what's going on here before that will make sense. But, okay, my brains are melting from trying to read all of this investment type stuff. I am not an investment person. I don't know how to read stock filings and SEC filings and stuff like that. So I've been struggling a little bit, but I've been doing my best. And so I'm going to bring you up to speed on what happened as I understand it. And then there has been some newer information, apparently. Like, the person who wrote this article just came out in July, and so this is a lot more recent, and I haven't found anybody else with this particular take on the situation just yet. So this person is a CPA, and he went over Snail's public filings and stuff, and he studied all these filings, the earnings releases, the license agreement disclosures going back to the IPO, and the string of NASDAQ 8Ks. Some of the popular narrative holds up. Much of it does not match the filings. This is analysis, not investment advice, and it is just my read. So I'm going to back up a little bit here, though, and let me pull up Canva here, where I'm going to do a little bit of illustrating here. Okay, so when these companies originally became affiliated with each other was in December of 2015. And at that time, what was filed with the state of Florida was listed as a merger, not an outright sale. I don't exactly know what the legal differences are there, but it wasn't a sale per se. It was listed as a merger between Studio Wildcard, which had already been developing ARC, and SDE Incorporated, which was listed as being a subsidiary of Snail Games, of which Snail Games USA is also a subsidiary. It's all these related companies and stuff. Anyway, and the ARC IP, the ownership of that was actually retained by Studio Wildcard in this merger. However, Studio Wildcard itself essentially became the property of SDE Inc. And I don't know if this situation has changed at some point or if this is the way it was structured right from the start. But originally, these guys were basically, Snail Games was an affiliate of SDE, or SDE was an affiliate of theirs. I don't quite get the difference. But anyway, they were related. But then at some point before 2022, when Snail Games USA had its IPO, they split and went on paper went their separate ways so that they were no longer connected to each other legally on paper. And SDE retained ownership of the ARC IP and studio Wildcard. But Snail Games is the publisher. And the publisher, I did a lot of research also on finding out what is the role of a publisher? What does a publisher actually do for a video game? And I found a bunch of information, and it's actually more than I thought. So they do a little bit of everything, depending on, of course, the situation and the particular agreement between them. But the game publisher helps get the game made and seen. They provide the money for the game development studio because obviously while they're originally building the game, they're not making any money and people still have to eat and pay rent, right? And so if they don't have several years worth of paychecks put away somewhere, they need money to live in the meantime. And so working with a publisher can give them that working capital to get started. And so that's one reason why indie game developers usually choose to work with a publisher. So they provide funding and budget oversight, and they'll cover a portion or all of the development costs. In exchange, they take a percentage of the game's revenue once it launches. Publishers often will set the budget, approve spending, and monitor how that money is used. And this is all completely generic. This is not about Snail and ARC and Wildcard specifically. This is just generic stuff about indie game developers and publishers. To make sure development stays on track, publishers will often break the project into milestones and provide payouts when various milestones are met. They may also assign producers or project leads to work directly with the dev team. Sometimes they will have creative and technical input. Sometimes they will be more hands-off. They may weigh in on game mechanics that affect user retention or monetization. They may also affect art direction and tone. They are responsible for platform choices, console, mobile, PC, or cross-platform. They can weigh in on game balance, etc. They are supposed to provide QA and technical support. So it's actually the publisher who is supposed to provide quality assurance. That means testing for bugs, performance issues, compatibility problems, and anything that could break the player experience. Some publishers have full in-house QA teams. Others work with third-party testing agencies. Either way, they usually help manage playtesting and feedback cycles, platform certification. I don't know if you've noticed, like I have, that almost every time an ARC map or update drop is delayed, Wildcard has cited issues with platform certification. They're waiting on the PlayStation certification or they're waiting on the Xbox certification. Well, it turns out that that certification is supposed to be handled by Snail Games. So, I mean, if the work environment is the way it sounded like it is in my previous video about the Glassdoor company reviews, I could see why sometimes they don't do a great job of that. Compliance with hardware or software guidelines, localization and translation testing for global releases. This is all stuff that the publisher is supposed to manage. Without proper QA support, even great games can flop due to technical problems. Publishers help reduce that risk by making sure the game is ready for prime time. Yeah. So the game developers are supposed to actually develop the game and build the game. And they do a limited amount of testing, of course, as part of that whole process. But they're not supposed to have to do wide-scale play tests and manage all of that. The publisher is supposed to take care of that. What do game publishers do after develop? Once the game is built, the job's far from over. This, in many ways, this is where things get even more important. People need to hear about it, want to play the game, and actually download or buy it. So the publisher is supposed to do marketing and promotion. Marketing is one of the biggest responsibilities for a game publisher. I know I have wondered for years why there is so little marketing around Ark. Pretty much most of the people who play it have found out about it through word of mouth or because it came up on a Steam sale, but mostly word of mouth. I don't know about you, but that's how I found out about it. Some may have found out about it through content creators, YouTubers, stuff like that, but very few content creators are being paid by the game developer for Ark or the game publisher in order to produce content for the game. They're making content about the game because it's a fun game that lends itself to making a lot of content about it, because it doesn't have a tutorial, because it's got a very passionate following and community that loves to watch content about it, etc., etc. So yeah, very little paid marketing is happening around this game. And even the major content releases, the vast majority of the marketing and promotion for them happens through the Community Crunch, which is Wildcard's weekly newsletter. And they release a trailer usually alongside each of these big updates, not in advance. There's nobody else building hype in advance other than the community. And so, to me at least, I'm no expert, but it seems like Snail's a fairly crappy publisher. Like they're supposed to be just the game's publisher. They're not even doing a good job of that. I'm sure that's a massive shock for anybody who's been following Snail games. But anyway, so that's some of what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to run media campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. They're supposed to scale up things relating to rollout, distribution, launch strategies, stuff like that. And they're supposed to provide the live ops and post-launch support. Publishers often will support or fully manage live ops. It seems that Wildcard is the one doing most of the live ops, which is a very good thing, even if it's imperfect, as I'll get into a little bit later. So they expect a share of the revenue. There's revenue share models. Sometimes they do flat fee deals, advance payments, bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. So there's different licensing and platform deals. Anyway, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but that gives you a little bit of an overview of what the role is of a games publisher and why a small indie studio will probably want to have a publisher. Because one of the things that I found out is Wildcard actually signed this merger and Snail became their publisher before the lawsuit that happened. So Snail didn't swoop in when they were broke from paying a penalty in a lawsuit like we had previously thought. And like I said in my previous video, that is actually not true. The timeline is that they signed this agreement with Snail in early December, and it was like a week or two later that this other company that Jeremy helped found and used to work for came and sued him for breach of contract, for claiming that he broke the non-compete that he had with them. And there's a lot of messy back and forth on that one as far as who's at fault, et cetera, et cetera. I do think it's interesting, though, that Wildcard is still going strong and seems to be a fairly healthy place to work with Jeremy and Jesse in charge, whereas Trendy Entertainment, the company that sued him, they no longer exist. And they were said to have a very toxic workplace. So do with that what you will. So anyway, the basic gist is that SDE and Snail merged with Studio Wildcard, but then at some point before the IPO, Snail Games split off into a separate entity. And what Snail did is they signed an agreement to pay licensing fees to SDE for the use of the Ark IP. So they're paying money to SDE, and SDE owns Wildcard and the ARC IP. Snail Games does not own this. SDE owns this. The thing is, though, who is SDE? Well, SDE is listed as a wholly owned property or company owned by Ying Zhao. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Whereas Snail Games and Suzo Snail and other entities with similar names are owned by Hai Shi. And Hai Shi, however, and Ying Zhao they are a married couple. So this little arrangement, they're separate companies only in name, only on paper, basically. And so why is his company paying her company all this money for ARC licensing fees? And it is a lot of money. It appears to be their largest expense every year. It's like 40% of their budget is paying for ARC licensing fees and royalties for the ARC IP. Yeah, let's see. It was $24 million in 2025 license fees and $18.6 million in royalties. If Snail actually owned the ARC IP, that would have stayed inside the company, but instead they flowed out to SDE. And if you put that $42.6 million against Snail's entire 2025 cost base of $98.5 million, then that means that payments to the CEO's wife's company were 43% of everything that Snail spent. So 43% of the budget went across the dinner table from him, his company, over to her company before any of it was listed as profit or went to the shareholders or anything like that. And it was done completely legally because all of this is disclosed in their filings with the SEC. So yeah, this is a known thing. And even though it's legal, it definitely is a conflict of interest because, of course, since Snail Games is now a public company, they're supposed to be looking out for their stockholders' interests, right? They're supposed to be trying to make money for their stockholders. That's what a publicly traded company is supposed to do. And instead, 43% of their budget is going across the dinner table to his wife to stash away in her company, and it's just being written off as operating expenses. And Snail is showing a loss, and Snail's financials look terrible. They're losing money every year. But even if Snail's losing money, this couple is not losing money. They're making money hand over fist. And they've renegotiated this agreement about the actual percentages of what the licensing fees and what the royalties are going to be. That's been renegotiated apparently at least 4 times since 2022. But one thing that I looked for and could not find any evidence of, you know who doesn't have a seat at that bargaining table, the dinner table here? I couldn't find any evidence that anybody from Wildcard has any kind of decision-making power in any of this. They're just a thing that SDE owns, that Ying Zhao owns. And Snail Games, if people who own shares in Snail Games might think that they're a part owner of the ARC IP, but they're not. All they own is a little piece of a license that does expire, by the way. It expires in 2035, but then is automatically renewed for 3 years, and they can't break this agreement apparently without 365 days written notice. And what this ends up doing, and I can't say if they did this on purpose, if this was planned on their part, or if this is just a lucky little side benefit, But that means if, as many in the ARC community have hoped for a long time, if Snail Games actually does eventually go bankrupt, doesn't matter. The ARC IP is not an asset owned by Snail Games, so it won't be sold to anybody else. Snail Games goes kaput, oh well, he'll just come over and they'll have all this money from SDE anyway, and they'll still have the ARC IP, and then they can start up another publisher or sign a contract with some other publisher. Who knows? But basically, it's really sad, it's really frustrating, but it appears that the only way that Wildcard could get free of these people would be by abandoning the ARC IP, since they own the ARC IP now. I mean, they don't own the individual people who work at Wildcard, of course. They don't own the brain trust. If everybody at Wildcard walked out of the office tomorrow and went and started up a new company, well, they could do that theoretically, but they couldn't take any of their work for the last 10 years with them. They couldn't take the ARC IP. They couldn't take or use any of the code, any of the assets, any of it. And I really can't imagine them doing that. So all I can do is say that I really hope that whoever owns stock in this company, yeah, you're being screwed over, basically. I mean, in my opinion, as someone who's not a professional in this, if you own stock in Snail Games, you're being screwed over because they're scooping off 40% of the money from the ARC IP and funneling it over to this other company under operating expenses before they have to report any kind of a profit. So yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. And I'm sure also that Jeremy and Jesse did not know that this is what they were getting themselves into when they originally signed the original documents back in the day, because there's no way they could have known. The relationship does seem to have soured in the time since then. Just as a small example of that, this is not new information to anybody who's been around the ARC community for a while, but for people that are new to the ARC community, you may not be aware that there was a scandal that came out about 4 years ago that Shihai, this guy, it was discovered that he was playing on official PvP servers and cheating and trying to force the Wildcard to do certain things. I mean, the things that he says, there was a whistleblower apparently who posted some of this information, and I did take some of this to AI and ask it to translate the Chinese for me, and it appears from what I could see that these translations do seem pretty accurate. Of course, it's impossible to prove if this is actually Shihai's account or not, but yeah, basically they were demanding that tribes that raid them get banned from the servers. They were demanding that servers be taken down so that they wouldn't lose at various battles and stuff. And they literally, in one of these videos, and I'll link this below if you want to take a look at it, they were literally ordering the DDoSing of ARC servers to cover up their corruption and to cover up that they were basically trying to take down these other tribes. That, you know, he said DDoS them until all of their dinos starve. And in some of these, Shihai is specifically threatening Jeremy. He says, you tell Jeremy if he can't solve the problem before the end of tomorrow, I will wipe all Asian servers except for 104 at tomorrow midnight, and I will take back all operational management permissions. Furthermore, you let that SOB community manager rebuild my base and return to me. Otherwise, I will fire him. Wow. And that's just one clip. There's like 13 videos or something that this guy posted. It's a very small account. This anonymous whistleblower here that has less than 100 subscribers posted these 16 videos just on this situation. No voiceover, no nothing, just these clips. And this is, I believe that this is what Hod used several years ago to cover this story. But there's more here than what was originally mentioned when that scandal first came out. Like, I never heard about this back in the day. Shihai wasn't happy with Wildcard trying to resist their his attempts to get these other tribes banned and them wanting evidence of cheating before they would ban a tribe and stuff like that. So he said, you arranged to, and he's talking here to one of his employees, Peter Kang, who, by the way, Peter Kang is also someone who is listed on Snail's board of directors. So they're all playing Ark together. Isn't that lovely and cozy? These guys all playing Ark together. Isn't that a nice little company team building exercise, we'll call it, right? So Shi is telling Peter Kang, apparently, in this video, you arranged to forge a fake screenshot of Jeremy chatting to others, indicating that he is the boss behind A-Team, so their cheats will not be banned, making them the biggest RMT seller of Ark. They attack other tribes and then sell items and dinos to make money, which is specifically what Shihai and T-Tribe were doing. So he wanted to forge fake evidence saying that Jeremy was doing this stuff and that Jeremy was actually playing on a tribe. And then it says, use Jeremy's profile photo. Peter Kang, you translate it. Once done, send it to Jeremy and tell him we have this evidence to prove why he doesn't take actions on cheats. So they were trying to forge fake evidence to try to blackmail Jeremy to do their bidding on the official servers. This is back in 2018 that this happened, I believe. It says at the beginning of this video. Yeah, April 19th, 2018 is when these are specifically from. And Peter, prepare 3 vaults of fully charged electric prods on the aberration server. You must take down server 51 today. Peter, have someone spread the screenshots to Reddit once it's finished. Better have our allied tribe Black Pearl do it. Create media hype and community pressure on him, forcing him to wipe out A-Team, this tribe that his tribe was at war with. Like, seriously, dudes, like, do you not have a real life? Like, why are you spending real money and all of this time to cheat on your own official servers? It's just an absolute mess. Absolute mess. And so, yeah, I can't imagine with them talking like that and planning that kind of stuff. It's not like Shihai and Jeremy Stieglitz and Jesse are on good terms. I don't know when the relationship soured between them, but it's pretty obvious now that the relationship between them has soured. But Wildcard cannot get free of them, apparently, not without leaving the Ark franchise behind. And I don't have a solution for this. I wish I had a happy ending. I wish I had an idea. Maybe if somebody else is a lawyer, maybe they'll have an idea. Maybe somebody can help to put pressure on the other board members. Because here's the board of directors of Snail Games. And I don't know who all of these people are. The thing is, being on a board of directors, a lot of times it's just like a couple of meetings a year. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're involved in the day-to-day running of a company, I don't think. Like, sometimes you're basically just you're in a role where you're a consultant or something. And they just are, the company is getting to use your name to bolster their reputation. I have no idea if these people, if all of them know how crooked and corrupt Shi and Yi Zhao are, which, by the way, she was there too in these videos here. There's some spots where she's also chiming in. Like, apparently she also was playing Ark with Shihai. I like to play as a family, I guess. Isn't that lovely? Anyway, so yeah. And this, I thought this was funny. The CEO revealed massive Ark license fee savings that they negotiated. Apparently, she was taking credit for it. That, oh, we saved all this money. We are now paying $500,000 a month less of licensing fees. It's like, okay. So basically, he said, hey, hon, can we pay a little bit less in licensing fees this month or until Ark 2 comes out? Make the Snail balance sheet look a little better. Oh, yeah, sure, hon. And then the CFO gets to say, yay, we renegotiated our licensing terms. What a mess. And she said this with a straight face, too, which I thought was pretty funny. Yeah. So, I mean, even if what they have done is supposedly legal, it's still slimy. It's still slimy as all heck. And I hope that somehow or other karma gets these people. That's all I can say. And in the meantime, I'm still going to play Ark because it's an awesome game that isn't developed by these guys. These guys play it too because it's an awesome game, but I'll tell you what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to play on official servers, especially official PvP, and especially Conquest servers. I don't know when the Conquest servers started. It may have been in 2018 after this whole kerfuffle. But the Conquest servers are wholly owned, wholly run, wholly enforced by Snail Games with no wildcard involvement at all. So if you're playing on Conquest servers, you are at the mercy of these guys. You're playing in their playground, and they get to be the gods of that little playground and have access to all the admin cheats and and sell stuff for real money. Not that they need the money, they're already billionaires, but it's just a game to them, right? Anyway. In other news, I'm going to be starting an Ark playthrough soon, which I'm excited about because I actually have never done a solo playthrough of any Ark map. I've always played with friends and kind of been carried by other people. So I'm going to be on my own for the first time ever. And if you want to see how that goes, come hang out with me on Twitch. I'm going to be streaming it. Have a great day. Bye-bye for now.